Welcome to the Sports Marketing Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Nizer. Today, we're talking about operational efficiency. I sit down with Mike Van Hise from Game Day Advising. Mike has been in minor league sports for many years, and we talk about how you get 3% better, and that includes marketing, ticketing, concessions, operations. This conversation is a complete roadmap that you can use this homestand, this series as you prepare for next year and what it all looks like. And we talk a lot about the different areas where you can improve. We talk about clarity over cuts, concession items that move, the presentation versus price, ticketing mix that protects you from the weather, and so much more. This is a very action-packed episode, and Mike just dropped some great value bombs to be able to help you understand how to get just 3% better in your entire operation. Without further ado, let's get to it. Excited to welcome Mike to the podcast. Mike, let's dive in here. We're going to be talking about a very sexy topic, operational efficiency. But before we dive into what it is and all the fun stuff related to that, Game Day Advising. When did you start this? Why did you start this? Obviously, you got a career in minor league baseball and working in sports, but you probably saw some opportunities here, huh?
I did. You know, when I left Boise to move back to Indianapolis, what I saw was in the last couple of years of working in the independent baseball space, a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of opportunity to grow and share my experiences as we were switching from affiliated to unaffiliated. So I've had it's got to be 15 years of affiliated baseball experience, so I have all of everything on that side of it, and running different departments and working for different teams in different types of markets, and then switched over to, then Boise had to switch in 2020 to independent, and all of a sudden it was a completely new world, right? We lost our players, we lost our coaching staffs, and the first thing we had to do was like, how are we going to manage this side of it, and how are we going to get leaner by still having the same type of product on the field? So when I stepped away from Boise and moved to Indianapolis, I thought I have a lot of knowledge in here, and now my goal is to share with as many people as possible.
Love it. So let's dive into the topic of operational efficiencies. When I think about that, it's more than just how their ticket sales department runs. What is operational efficiency?
I mean, we all know in our organizations just how massive they are. They may not be very big when you think about it, when you want to compare yourselves to like the Big Fours and some of these bigger franchises. But really, it's just a lot of like different levers and different dials that you need to hit. And some teams can be the best at one thing and maybe not necessarily the best at the second thing. And so operational efficiency is more about, it's not about cutting budgets. It's not about trying to spend the least amount of money as possible. While I'm sure there's some owners out there that would really appreciate that, it's about clarity. It's about knowing kind of where your money is, where it's going. A lot of money goes out, a lot of money comes in, and the goal at the end of the year, as I'm sure for everybody, is that there's more coming in than going out. And so we can control the going out, but we really need to be able to control the going in too.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So when a team calls you up and says, okay, Mike, what would it look like from an operational efficiency? Where are you going to start? Is there certain departments you start with first, or you kind of have conversations? Like what's that first step?
I think it's really the conversations is really the first steps that I've been having with these teams is like, where are you seeing your personal pain points? Each team runs completely differently. And, when you look at, you can look at a P&L of teams, or you can look at some budgeting of teams and be like, hey, where are we going to, where can we figure out the points that are going to be the best for us? But really just kind of diving in and figuring out where the pain points are. Is it our workers' comp? Is it our insurance? Is it our staffing? Are we staffed a proper way? That's where I like to jump into first, because everything else is fixable, right? Revenues are fixable, whether it's figuring out sponsorship strategy, ticket sales strategy, season tickets, group sales, etc., food and beverage strategy, and those arrangements that you have with if you're using third parties. But if you don't understand where the money is going and how it's leaving, then you're not really going to be very effective on that one. So sitting down, looking at where the pain points are, and saying, "Hey, I think we're spending too much money here," or I'm watching leakage here. Leakage is a more of a technical term that I'm not using at that point, but just like, hey, we're seeing where money's rolling out this way. Where can we figure out where we can kind of close some gaps?
So when you are starting to kind of take a look at these opportunities here with teams, and you're sitting down, let's talk about like let's just start with like concessions. Let's start there. You sit down with the team and you're looking at the P&L. What are some things that are pretty obvious that may not be like they're obvious to you, but maybe aha moments for the teams as you start talking through about making money on the concession side?
The first thing I really look at is what the offerings are, right? It's like staffing is what the staffing is. And if you have a robust system, or even just a relatively not robust system, but you're able to see like, it's one thing to have like 1,000 things on the menu, right? And maybe you don't need 1,000 things on the menu. And I know, to give some stories, in Boise, there's a couple menu items, and Jake from Boise, if he ends up watching this, will have those laughing conversations because it's things that were added to the menu. We thought they were going to be super successful, and realized after the end of the year that we were selling one per game, right? We had 48 games and we were selling 50 of them. Well, that thing's coming off the menu anymore. So when looking at the menu, what we like to do is look at ingredients and treat it more like a restaurant than treat it more like a restaurant than in a food and beverage operation. SKU wise on drinks. We could have 27 SKUs. You could have Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, Pepsi Zero, Diet Mountain Dew, and Mountain Dew. But like, do you really need all of those SKUs? And so and that side of it is about speed. It's about inventory. It's about speed at the concession. It's about speed for the fan. Like if the fan only has 8 or 9 drinks to choose from, that decision is going to be made quicker, which means your flip over rate's going to be a lot faster.
Love it. So you're looking at every single angle here, maybe even proposing, instead of doing the bag in the box drinks, let's go to bottles and cans because you might move them faster, right?
I'm a big proponent of bottles and cans. I know if you have the infrastructure for bag in the box, that's probably those are where your best margins are. But a lot of teams don't take into consideration ice and the amount of ice that you need to purchase, or the amount of ice makers that you need to have, and ice makers break. But bottles and cans, they always stay cold. If you keep them in the refrigerator, the margins are a little bit less, but you're able to move them a lot faster too. It's like, hey, I want a Dr. Pepper, bang, you get a Dr. Pepper. It's like a second. If someone wants a Dr. Pepper and it's a large Dr. Pepper, you could be looking at 6, 7, 8 seconds, and those add up to where the point where the person last in line is now waiting 15 minutes instead of 10, and maybe they only go to the concession stand once. Or the line was way too long, and maybe they don't go back, or maybe they're just like so frustrated they walk out of line, and that's the last thing that you want to happen.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. That Walmart, Home Depot, stack it high, let it fly. The margins might be a little bit thinner, but you're turning things on over and creating a better experience for the fans, which kind of leads me to the next piece. In order to get fans, you have to sell some tickets. So when you sit down to talk about the ticketing team, what does that look like to really figure out, are we charging enough? Are we not charging enough? Do we have different packages, sponsorships, like all of the above there? What do you look at when you start to sit down with the team?
We look at, the first thing I look at is market comparative. So it's inside the league and inside the current league that they're in, and inside the market that you're at. And so if you're in like a town like this one, like Indianapolis, right, where that's where I'm based. Yeah, the Indians do a fantastic job. Let's just say we're going to drop a non-affiliated team in the outskirts of town. Like, you shouldn't be comparing yourself to the Indians on the price side of it, or the Colts or the Pacers. You got to find your own space and figure out what your fans are telling you. And so, one of the first things that I look at is when I'm talking to teams is their strategy on group sales, their strategy on season seat sales, which most teams don't have a strategy on season seat sales. And I put together kind of an insight on my website about where are we in the season seat kind of world, where do we need to keep calling single game buyers to try to get them to buy full season seats? I mean, those people who are single game buyers are going to find you. They're not going to find you don't need to go and find them. So in my career of sales learning, I started with the Lakewood Blue Claws back in 2005, and that was a group sales heavy, organization. So for the 9 years, I worked in the group sales department and learned basically to become an expert in group sales. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Augusta and transitioning into the Augusta, which was a different type of model run by Jeff Eisman, Aegon Sports, Ripken Baseball, Mandalay, the season seats in the business program. I became an expert on that side of it, and that's how we did in Augusta, and that's what we did in Boise. So walking into an organization that may not have seen either one of those strategies or seen a variation of those strategies, all of a sudden are getting an expert on both sides of it. A lot of people out there are one-sided or the other-sided, or either in group sales or season seat sales, but coming, game day advising, we have both, and we learn kind of the right way to do it in both different levels.
Now, when you go into a team, obviously it depends on the location and population and what have you. Do you recommend more of the group sales approach or the season, or a little bit of a hybrid of both? And obviously it depends in certain situations, right?
We really, when we walk into a team, the first thing we do is, and it depends on like the time of the year that we're doing, that we get engaged. If it's early in the year, like let's say it's a July or August and we're talking more about the upcoming season, then we're going to jump into on the season seat side of it and really start focusing and trying to, because it takes about 30 to 45 days to transition, more of a mindset than a strategy. It's like, listen, we need to, a lot of teams don't focus on season seats. So when they lose, for example, a full season seat holder of 4 seats, those you have to think about it like in the WAR side of it, the wins over replacement player, right? And if you lose a full season seat holder, you need to find 10. If it's 70 games, you use the full season model. If it's to lose a 4-seater on full seasons, you need to find 10 7-game mini plan people. It's like, how are we going to do that? And so it's like putting in the focus of full seasons and even down to like the half seasons, and like the mini plans will come later down the road, and those are the people that are going to come and find you. But putting in the focus of like, here's the full season seat holders, and really focusing towards the businesses, right? Not trying to go and call, Joe Fan who came to 1 game or 3 games last year and being like, what's 70 look like? Because that's a massive jump. For
huge
businesses
jump.
And almost every business, especially out there, that have salespeople and have staff, can use some sort of season seats for their strategy in so many different ways, whether it's retaining employees, bringing in new employees, retaining customers, and bringing in customers. So that's where we put our focus. If we're a little bit later down the road and the season seats is kind of we're now into like the winter, the early winter, we're probably focusing in on the group sales and making sure that we have our group sales in our hospitality areas and things along those lines focused, because that's where we want to make sure that we're going to get the best bang for our buck and working on that side of it.
Absolutely. Well, how do you overcome it when a team says, hey, this is how we've always done it? Because we've all heard that before, right?
I've heard that. I've probably heard that more than anything else, and it's like, that's where the trust side of it comes in. Is that you have to trust, and you have to take me on this. You have to go on this road with me. I'm like, I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to give you the strategy. I'm going to share you the strategy. I'm going to give you everything that you need to move forward. And like, just take this leap of faith, right? If you've been doing it for one way, and you're coming and you're asking, whether you're asking Game Day Advising to help us, there's a reason that I'm here. There's a reason that it's a pain point, and so, hey, we're going to either bang our head on the wall and do the same thing we've been doing for the last 20-odd years, or we're going to try this one. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And you're just going to be the same as you were. But I'm telling you that if you go to this strategy and you change your mindset, we're going to have success as 2 organizations moving together with each other. So, yeah, this is the way we always do it. It's the worst thing I've ever heard. I kind of try to block it out of my vocabulary. I've been guilty of saying it through my 20-year career. I've said it less and less and less every year, but I still say it, and I don't blame anybody who's going to say it.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So let's just pretend you got a new team, you're working with them. Let's just use the ticket sales process, and you're working with them on kind of the ticket sales side. 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, is there some certain checkpoints? What does that look like where you look back and go, hey, this is going really well? Or if you need to double down, is there kind of some checkpoints, for lack of a better term?
The quickest thing I try to work on is getting historics. And how fast can we get some historics? Give us the last 3-year run. Don't give me the last 15-year run. Don't give me the last 10-year run, because we're going to see where the market's going. So whether all of a sudden it's like more individual tickets or more group sales or more season seat sales, if it happens to be that one, then we can start to pull those levers. That's what I like to try to get done in like the first 7 days. It's like, those is information that we should have. You know, if you change a ticketing system, that's a completely different completely different monster. But if you can give us those historics, I can start giving you the roadmap of where we are. And then it's like, we're trying to get those dials, and I've always said, like, the dials, where do you want to be those dials to be? 33, 33. If you have 33% of your revenue coming in as season seats, 33% as groups, and 33% as individual single game tickets, that is like the goal right there, because you're looking at, the individual tickets is it could be a big number, which means your group number and your season ticket. If you're really, really low on season seats, then we got to dial that up. If you're really low on groups, you got to dial it up. The last thing, especially on the baseball side of it, it's different for different sports. I do focus a lot on baseball. You can't rely on that individual ticket buyer. You cannot rely on that. That could kill you. Through a bad rainstorm rolls in on a week in a homestand. I mean, it completely can massively crush your budget. So, but with the group sales and with the season seat sales, those are your guarantees. So if you're sitting at, if you're sitting and looking at your attendance, and 66, anywhere from 55 to 66% of it are pre-sold, not reliant upon weather, not reliant on the promotion, or not reliant on the whims of the people or things that are going on in the community, you're in a great position. If it's 10%, 12%, 20%, like I said, one bad rainstorm or 105-degree weather, depending on where you are, can completely wipe you out.
Yeah, no doubt about that. One of the things that you talked about earlier on the concession side is the balance between speed and margin. There's something to be said about kind of that, getting it done faster so that the fans have a greater game day experience and they feel like they're enjoying things. But at the same time, you're also in the business to make money. So how do you balance the two of those?
Baseball is unique. I look at on the soccer side of it. If you've ever been to a soccer game, the concession stands are dead when they kick off to halftime. Then halftime they get crushed, and then it kind of trickles in towards the end of it. And so you just want to, if you're getting them to your line, you want to get them. You want to be able to capture as much as you can. That's why when I think about on the margin side of it, is like, margins are great, and having those concessions of margin, and obviously you don't want to be underwater with any products, but it's about the speed. You only get it. Baseball is different because you've got 16 to 17 opportunities for people to get up out of their seats and head down to the concession stand. But also, our breaks are 90 seconds, 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So that's where the speed side of it has to come in. And so if someone can go pregame, maybe mid-third and then sixth, and not miss a lot of action, they're not going to feel like they sat in line. And I'm sure, Jeremy, you've gone to games. I know I've gone to games. Whether it's an NFL game, then they're probably the worst one. Where you're like, you go down at the end of the first quarter and go to get a hot dog, and you miss 5 minutes of game time, which is like 25 minutes, and you're just like, I was sitting in the stands, and a lot of the ballparks of the people that I work with, we don't have the TVs that are right there, so people can still watch the game and stay in with the action. They're away from the action, away from what they pay for. And it's the same thing on the bathroom side of it, which is not a revenue, is not an expense necessarily, but it's a fan experience type of thing. Is like, how fast can we get these people through the bathroom?
Yeah. We talk about the concession side as kind of one of the areas for game day experience as well. But do you assess and kind of help and provide direction and support on the game day entertainment, game day operation side of things?
I do. We spend a lot of time talking about that. Those are, that's the fluff and the fun and the promotions, and how can we be efficient with our promotions, right? Whether it's speed on, speed off the field, and training people to do that the right way, or whether it's having the right, promotion, like, hey, this isn't moving, this doesn't move the needle, this does move the needle. Fireworks. We could talk about that. If I had the budgets for teams that I worked at, I would have done 70 fireworks shows a year. Because they always work, right? I'm sure the people that lived around the ballpark would have hated it.
Absolutely,
it is what it is. So we sit down. That's a lot of that's a space where a lot of the people that we talk to, they're just like, yeah, you know what, we've got that, and like that's the fluff in the fold side of it. But where is the operation? Where is the money is where they really like to make sure that we're spending the most of our time. But
yep.
I ran game entertainment for Augusta for a couple years, Lakewood for a couple years, and was intimately involved in the Boise operation. So it's not something that we don't have in our toolbook. I just don't, if someone wants to, bring us in to talk about game entertainment, it's probably not the best and most effective use of their time and their budgets.
Sure. And I'm sure you would provide some insight on video boards and what they cost now and where you could get one and some of that stuff, because the prices for video boards are all over the map for sure. So let's talk about a story, because I know you've probably got thousands of stories, but I'm thinking about a team that just doesn't want to spend any money, but spending a few $1,000s now to avoid a 5-figure hit later. What is a lesson or two that you've got there that says, hey, just spend the money today, because it's gonna hurt today, but it's gonna hurt a whole lot worse later.
I like to call it the book of bad ideas. A lot of people like to carry around their book of ideas, and they have all their book of good ideas. I've always been keeping a book of bad ideas too, of like mistakes that we've made, whether it's we, like you said, we spent hey, we need this giveaway item, or we've ran out of such and such, and it's like now we've got to pay a couple $100s to get it shipped to us quicker, or we're paying premium prices because we're going and buying it at the retail price as opposed to the wholesale price. Inventory management, it's like we've had this, and this is to nobody's fault in Boise, but we held a concert, a massive concert, and we just ran out of beer. So we had to run down to the local package store, purchase beer, to then turn around and resell it. I don't know how legal that is. That's a different conversation. But that's like and that's the margin side of it. Like, we're losing margins on that one. We as partially on the concert promoter. Not all of a sudden they had a massive walk up, and so we weren't expecting. We were expecting like 30% less than what actually ended up showing up, and that's why we ran out. But we had to go out and get it, and it's like if we had just pre-planned or had a better conversation with the promoter about historics, we probably would have been able to make a better margin on it. And I don't think that's a failure side of it, but that's just like in the book of bad ideas. So the next year when we're hosting an event, or that's something that we're always like, okay, but just remember that we probably should over prepare, knowing we can turn around and resell it at our games. Over prepare, especially on the beer side of it. As opposed to having to do it, and then on the completely inverse side of it, in a concert that we ran in Augusta when we had the Nelly and Florida Georgia Line were running through, we did the opposite. We went so heavy on food, and nobody ate.
Oh.
Like, we had the numbers right. We're like, hey, there's 7,000 people that are coming to this concert. Let's prepare like it's the 7,000 people coming to a ball game, and that group was there to do one thing and one thing only, and it was not to eat food. It was to drink beer and mix drinks and high noons at that time. So we learned that went into the book of bad ideas of like, hey, the next concert that we're doing, like, almost food should be set up like to order. You want chicken fingers? It's going to be 3 minutes on chicken fingers. Or you want, and have a couple things have a couple staples, slim down the menu completely, because we realized that nobody wanted to eat. They were all there to have a good time. They were all there to drink drinks, and we had extra. The next time we had extra bars and extra drink stations, and less on the food side of it, and we brought in some food trucks and let the food trucks handle it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. One of the other things that I've taken away from what you just said was you are okay with people making small mistakes, but not enormous mistakes. So walk me through kind of your approach to, because I've heard some employees who've worked for staffs where they're afraid to make mistakes, where you kind of, you're okay with it a little bit to an extent.
to an extent, of course, and I'm sure my former bosses would not like me to hear that, but we're all human beings, and when we build out our budgets, and I was building out my budget, like I like to, and I was actually just reading a book that talked about their budgeting, and like meticulously control 95% of your budget and leave that 5% of your budget for almost what happens type of things. And so when talking to staff, and I'm like, you guys, you're okay to make that $100 mistake, that $200 mistake. There's no dollar cap to like what the mistake you can make, but don't make the $10,000 mistake. Mm-hmm. So if it's like you want to try something because you think it's a good idea, because one of the things is I started to see, and I still see it in a lot of teams, is like whether it's the general manager, the vice president, the president, like every decision goes right through, like every single decision has to go through that person, and that it just becomes like you spend 95% of your day approving other people's ideas. Or making sure things are okay, when I would rather say, you know what, you can make small mistakes on your own. You can, if you wanted to go and print something out, or you needed to go purchase something, or you wanted to try a new menu item, and it was a couple $100, go ahead and make that mistake. If you want to spend $500 to $1,000, depending on the size of your team, the size of your budgets, just have like a little bit of a number in your head as a primary operator of like, I've got to be okay that if one of my staff members makes this mistake, it doesn't turn into World War III. It doesn't turn into this massive thing, because you just want, people learn so much more from mistakes than they learn from the right decisions. I use an example that we did in Boise is we partnered with, when the whole NIL thing started happening a couple of years ago, and we had the opportunity to start paying collegiate athletes to come out and throw out a first pitch and sign autographs. We took that chance. We made that, I think it was like $250 we were paying these players. And you would be surprised. And Boise is a unique market, because Boise State is like the big blue monster. Like they control they might as well be an NFL team in that market. So whether it was the basketball, the basketball star, or Ashton Gentry came out. Came out, who ended up being the number 8 pick in the draft. We had the starting quarterback, we had the starting running backs, all came out for the same amount of money, did the exact same thing, signed autographs. Those were like when we did the first one, and we did the first year of making those, like it was a chance, right? It was an opportunity. These are, one, how legal is it, right? Because it was all still ambiguous at the time. But then secondly, like it ended up, like the players, the athletes loved it. 2, the fans loved it. Some came out to the game just to get that autograph, just to get that picture, and that was a complete win. Now they're still doing it. I mean, we're 4 or 5 years in at this point, and it's still a program that's put together.
Yeah, but you had to roll the dice and give it a try, and just know when to kind of cut your losses and say, hey, this didn't work, and be willing to take that risk. But I appreciate that how you handle those situations and the culture that you impose to the staff, because you're right, VPs and GMs, if they have to make decisions all day long, like, they're not making any progress.
Yeah, and I'm too much of, like, I can't do the Steve Jobs side of it where he only had one outfit that he wore every day because he was just done making those decisions. I'm not quite there yet, so I like to have different types of outfits. But yeah, and well, when I worked with Boise, it was basically a Boise Hawks logo or something every day. But yeah, make the mistakes and let them make the mistakes, because they're gonna beat themselves up. These staff members, whether it's your next level down or even 2 levels down, are gonna beat themselves up more over a loss than a win is gonna ever make them feel good about themselves.
Yeah, and I think what that also does is it helps them mature as an employee. Hey, this is a mistake that I made. Here's what I would do differently. Here's how I would approach it. And then they think through the whole thing. That type of reflection you only get when you make mistakes. Doesn't always work when you get successful. So for sure. Let's talk about like improving, because as a marketing director, I always say, hey, if I can get 3 to 5% better from spending my marketing dollars or what have you, what do you try to look for like efficiency in your dozens of line items without trying to boil the entire ocean?
to give us, I've always used like the 3% rule. It's like, let's just get 3% better every year. And that whether it's in forethought or afterthought. And, I go back to early on in my career where I was handed, or a group of us was handed the budget and was like, you need to cut 10% from this budget. And like, there was no method that they were giving us, or just like, hey, the number's X, it needs to be Y. And that was a really, really hard project. I mean, we worked on that for weeks of just trying to figure out, and again, it was like in seasons, and they're asking us to cut hundreds of thousands of dollars from the budget, when really, if we're just looking at it, we're looking at it at the end of the year, and we're looking at it at the beginning of the year, is like, where can we just get like 3% better? Not on the revenue side of it, because your revenue expenses need to be a little bit higher. Your revenue increases need to be a little bit higher than that. But on the expense side, because you're already going against the world with inflation, the world with things that you want to do, and it's like, all right, how do we just get 3% better? How do we get 3% more efficient? And we watch that, and every single one of those line items, our budgets, the budget template that I've been using for the last 10 years is like 150 to 200 line items, and like a lot of them are like little small ones, but like, how can we just get like 3% better? And then if you do 3% just across the board, you look down at the bottom and you're like, dang, we just did a massive change in the way that we operate without really affecting the fan experience, without that, because that's just like, it's cutting fat versus cutting bone. And when the exercise was going back to when we had to cut 10%, like there were some bone cuts in there, and that was like, was something that we had planned, we had to cut, or something that we put a deposit down we didn't finish with. But when you cut in fat, and you're like, did we really need to? Or if we had purchased it, if we call up a vendor and say, if we pay in cash or we pay today, can we get 3% off, 5% off, 10% off? And you'd be shocked to learn in these vendor relationships, if you have good relationships with them, if you give them money ahead of time, you got to have it in the bank account. But if you give them money ahead of time, they'll be willing to come back with you with some price decreases.
Yeah, that great tips there. Speaking of that line item, what are some line items that can easily get out of control pretty quickly if you're not paying attention to it? The immediate one I think of is staffing. As in charge of the promo team, I bring in an extra person or two and all hell breaks loose, right?
Yeah. Staffing is always a big one, and because you have to manage that early. And that's what I talked to it's like, you have to manage the staff early, because pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered, right? And so I use ticket takers for an example, and like, not to knock on any ticket takers out there, but like, if the game's at 7, by like 8 o'clock, you're there's no more tickets to be taken. Everybody's in, and then you're just managing the front door. But if you go halfway through the season, and let's say you have 10 ticket takers managing 5 gates, and they all stay on through the end of the game or through the 7th inning, and then all of a sudden you're wanting to try to cut people at 8:15, like, you're good. That's like the team morale side of it, because like, oh, I'll be getting paid this and then this and this, and then they start looking for another job, or they start complaining, or they don't work as happy, they're not as happy. So it's managing it early and saying like, and that's where the data driven side of it is on the ticketing, is like, you can tell when your fans are coming in, where they're coming in. If you have 2 ticket takers sitting at the left field gate, and 100 people come in through that gate out of 10,000, but you go to the home plate gate has 5,000 people rolling in, and you still have the same 2 ticket takers, you can adjust, and you can bring you can manage your staffing on that side of it, and then so it's like, it's early on, learning what your data is, learning where your needs are, and being able to cut staff or use staff in different areas. Right, a ticket taker can become an ice cream scooper if you control your own food and beverage. A lot of factors in there, but if you're cross-training staff, especially on the game day side of it, if you have a small enough staff, and you could cross-train staff where a ticket taker could finish at 8 o'clock or 8:15 and maybe transition to the on-field team, or transition to usher, so that someone else can go and do something else. And so you're constantly kind of like moving the chess pieces to be more efficient. It's always the thing that I like to look at, and where I'm trying to talk to teams about, our staffing budget is through the roof. And it's like, well, you're keeping people a long time, and a lot of like standing around it. You gotta get less of the standing around and more of the doing things.
Last topic before we wrap up here, per cap. Teams are always trying to figure out how to make more money on the per cap side of things. When you sit down with a team, you kind of analyze their per cap. What are some things that you immediately kind of see, number one, and then number two, opportunities that are maybe not as obvious because people are in the weeds, but things that they can do to kind of enhance the per cap a little bit?
I'd hate to say increase your prices, but there's sometimes you have to look at it and be like, hey, maybe you should increase your prices, especially in some. And I know that like a lot of these teams and a lot of teams out there are very, especially in the environment that we're in right now, we're very knowledgeable and concerned about price of things. And it's like, yeah, you don't want a $10 hot dog or things like that. But I think the per caps really, I mean, one of the per caps and the most important thing that I look at is menu offerings. And I know going back to a topic that we already discussed is like, we have a ton of things on the menu and maybe there's some things out there you're looking at and you're like, this isn't moving. How can maybe I need to replace that with a more, a better, another entree. Like, if you have 7 entrees on your menu, maybe we need to replace that, the 5th and 6th and 7th performing entree with something that might be more appeasing to our fan base. Cook to order is huge. And that we had, I mean, Boise was a machine with that one. And so we built a grill area. We had a taco nacho stand. And those were our best per cap items. They were one of our highest priced items, but there was a difference between handing someone a wrapped up hot dog that had been cooked X amount of time ago versus watching someone like hand build your nachos or hand build your tacos. They're willing to pay that extra price. They're willing to pay that extra dollar cents for it. So a little bit of presentation would be shocking of how much, if you present you present a different product or a better product, people are willing to pay more for it, which is going to raise your per caps, not changing much of it. If like one of the things that's like I use as an example is if you're taking an order and then you build it behind a wall, it's different than if you're building like the Subway style. Just something about people watching that get put together raises the interesting value of that product.
Have you ever seen a team not have enough beer taps?
Yeah, it's the craziest. I've seen some teams not have beer taps. Just cans and bottles. But like, yeah, it's amazing to sit down with a team and they're like, hey, we're only offering 3 or 4 different types of beer and we've got 2 taps and we've got cans. And it's like we really need to one, rely on your distributor. To figure out how to help you solve that problem. 2, get some local flair into that. You'd be shocked. And I've been seeing this more and more in the last 4 years, where the Miller Lights, the Coors Lights, the Bud Lights are falling. And it's not even partially like the microbreweries, like the small batches that people want to purchase. I was shocked to see Modelo was like one of the top selling beers in the country. I would not have known that. If not having those conversations with our distributor at the time. And so it's like, all right, we're going to replace this, we're going to add this, bring in some local flair, just even so a couple of ones. 1, you get to charge a higher price on it. 2, the fans that maybe come in are not from the area, just like, oh, give me the local beer. Our old manager from Boise, Gary Van Tol, was anytime I went in there with him and it was time to order a beer, he's just like, what's the local beer? It didn't matter. It could have been a $30 beer. He was going to buy that one. And there's a lot of people out there that are just like that. They come into Boise, they want to go to a Hawks game, or they come into X amount of team, they want to go to a game, and it's like, just give me the local flair. If you don't have a local flair, you'd be shocked how many times they turn around and they're like, we're not getting a Coors. I can get a Coors Light, Bud Light, Miller Light anywhere. I want something that's unique to that area.
Absolutely. Love it. So game day advising obviously helps you with concessions because you know that like the back of your hand. You know the ticket sales side. What else does game day advising, more from the operational efficiency side, but what else does game day advising do and how they can help teams?
Every bit of, our mission statement is about the been there, done that, right? I've been in sports for over 20 years. I've seen the economic downturn of 2009. I've seen COVID in 2020, right? I don't think there's much else that someone can throw. I've seen markets go up, markets go down. I've seen booming markets, slowing markets, old ballparks, new ballparks. I've been almost everywhere where I've been there, done that type of it. So there's not much that teams can throw at us or markets can throw at us that we haven't seen before. I love working in the food and beverage. I love working in the ticket sales. One of the top things that we do, and it's kind of in our full club assessment, is I like to say we like take the engine apart. So we take the engine apart and put it back together, and that's where we put it back together more efficiently. There might be some spare parts. We're going to throw those to the side. We do some market analysis. We do a lot of competitor analysis and figure out how we can make your organization, your team, the most efficient, driving the highest revenues, not spending nearly as much as you probably should be or are doing at the time, to make you guys to make teams their most profitable engines, and then give them a path for growth. And how do we get that? It's not a 1 year fix. It's a multi-year build out, a multi-year operation.
Love it. So I'm going to put a link to not only the article you mentioned earlier about season tickets, but a link to your website and your email on the show notes. But I encourage teams to reach out, just have a conversation with you to say, hey, here's where we are. Here's where we think we have some problems. And you can kind of lead the conversation from there, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We do 30-minute consultations. We sit down, learn about your pain points, and then put a little bit of assessment together, and how can we build out a plan that's going to make you guys more efficient.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on. You dropped a lot of great value, great tips here for teams. So just thinking through some of the things that you shared here, and I strongly encourage teams that they're trying to figure out how they're going to make more money next year, and they're trying to figure out how to make things a lot better on themselves, to give you a call and just have that 30-minute conversation. You're going to learn so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.